The true price of a crown, is it measured in gold, in duty, or in the weight of history on your shoulders? A weight made of stone and memory, of whispers in the shadows of the very walls you now call home. For most of us, inheriting a house might mean a few pieces of old furniture, a dusty attic, maybe a photo album. But for a king, it means inheriting the residence, the permanent ones, the ones who don't appear on the royal payroll. It begins not in a throne room, but in a library, the library at Sandringham House. Imagine the smell, old leather and beeswax polish. The silence is a thick, heavy blanket, the kind of quiet where you can hear the tick of a clock from 3 rooms away. One evening in the 1970s, a young Prince Charles was doing just that, alone, looking for something to read. The fire was dying down. The long winter night was closing in. He was lost in thought, his fingers tracing the spines of books that kings and queens before him had touched. And then he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A slow, grating drag, like something metal being pulled across the floor. Something heavy. It was coming from the corridor outside the library door. In a house like Sandringham, there are always noises. Pipes settling, floorboards creaking. But this was different. This was a sound with purpose. A sound that seemed to be moving. It was right on the other side of the door now. His hand closed around the cold brass knob. What would he find? A member of staff? A dog with a favorite toy? He turned the knob and pulled the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty, long silent. The long Persian rug was perfectly smooth, undisturbed. There was no one there. No way anyone could have gotten away that fast. A cold feeling, one that had nothing to do with the winter night, began to creep up his spine. He turned to go back into the library, and as he did, the sound started again, louder, right behind him, not in front of him, not down the hall, but right behind him, in the library he had just left. He spun around. The library was exactly as he left it. The fire, the chairs, the books. But the noise was now coming from inside the room. It was frantic now. Not a drag, but frantic, angry scrabbling. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was fear. A deep, primal fear that echoes back through centuries. The fear of the unseen. He stared into the room, his face pale. The sound seemed to be coming from near the fireplace. He didn't enter. He simply reached out slowly and pulled the door shut. He stood there in the empty hallway, listening to the terrible sound coming from the other side of the door. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence that followed was louder and more terrifying than the noise itself. He never found a source for the sound. No logical explanation was ever given, but he knew what he heard, and he knew he wasn't the first. For generations, the ghost of Sandringham has been known by a name. They call her the Rustling Lady. Some say she is the spirit of a maid, forever attending to duties no one can see. Others say it's something older, but her signature is always the same. The sound of long, silk dress rustling as she walks the halls, a sound that, to a frightened young prince, could very easily be mistaken for something else scraping across the floor. But one ghostly librarian was just the beginning, because the crown owns more than one palace, and each one comes with its own set of keys and its own set of spirits. If Sandringham was a warning, a first strange whisper from the past, then what happened at Windsor Castle was a full-blown conversation, and the spirit who started it was one of the most powerful monarchs who ever lived. Windsor, the oldest and largest inhabited castle in the world. Its stones have seen everything. Plague, war, celebration, betrayal. It's a history book written in rock and mortar. It was during a private tour of the castle's famous library. Yes, another library. It seems the past likes to speak where the books are kept. As Charles was being shown around, he stopped dead. His guide turned to see what was wrong. The prince was staring, not at a book, but at a portrait on the far wall. His face was a mask of astonishment. He pointed. He asked the guide, "Who is that? Who is that woman in the portrait?" The guide was confused. He looked. There was no portrait of a woman on that wall. There were landscapes, maps, but no women. Charles insisted. He described her in perfect detail. She was there, clear as day, staring back at him with dark, piercing eyes. She wore a magnificent Elizabethan ruff around her neck, a gown of incredible detail, and she had a presence, a terrifying, awe-inspiring authority that seemed to fill the room. The guide knew immediately who he was describing. There was only one woman who fit that description in all of Windsor's long history, the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth I. Her portrait used to hang in that exact spot centuries ago, but it had been moved long before Charles was born. He could never have known what it looked like or where it once hung, yet he saw her, as real as you or I. Why would she appear to him? A queen known for her fierce intelligence and her stubborn will? Was it a sign of approval? A warning from history? Or simply a reminder that he was just the latest in a long line, and that the previous tenants were still very much at home? 2 encounters, 2 different palaces, 2 different centuries reaching out to touch the present. But the most personal haunting, the one that would blur the line between the spirit world and the world of heartbreak, was yet to come, and it would happen in the most famous house of all, the most famous house in the world, Buckingham Palace. 650,000 square feet of history, not just a building, but a living, breathing entity. Its walls have absorbed the cheers of jubilees, the silence of mourning, and the secrets of generations. But some secrets don't stay in the walls. They walk the halls. For a prince, and then a king, this isn't just a workplace. It's a home, or it was supposed to be. But how can any place feel like home when you are never truly alone there? Even in the quietest hour of the night, the past is restless. It's the little things first. The feeling of being watched from an empty room. The soft sigh from a shadowy corner that has no source. A cold spot in a hallway that makes the hairs on your arm stand up, even on the warmest summer day. You tell yourself it's the drafty old windows, the ancient ventilation. But a part of you, the oldest part, knows better. And then there are the footsteps, not the brisk, purposeful steps of footmen on duty, not the soft-soled shoes of a housemaid. These are different, heavier. They echo with a weight that seems to come from another time. They have been heard by staff, by guests, and by the family themselves. Walking the corridors in the dead of night, a slow, steady pace that goes nowhere and ends abruptly. The sound of boots that haven't been worn for a century, marching on a duty that never ended. They say it's a grenadier guardsman, a soldier who once stood watch over the palace and now, in death, refuses to abandon his post. He has most often felt a sudden pressure in the air near the balcony where the royal family appears to crowds. His post is eternal. But the soldier is not the only one who walks. There is another presence, a darker one, a figure that brings not a chill, but a deep, profound sadness with it. It is the spirit of a man who is seen not in the grand staterooms, but in the private apartments, the living quarters. He is tall, dressed in the formal clothes of a bygone era, and he is consumed by an anguish so palpable it feels a physical force. He is often seen weeping. His shoulders shake with silent, desperate sobs. His face is hidden in his hands, a portrait of utter despair. This is the ghost of John Brown, Queen Victoria's most devoted servant, her closest friend, the man she relied on after the death of her beloved Albert, the one person who could speak plainly to her, who she trusted above almost all others. His death shattered her. She built statues to him, wrote of him in her diaries as her dear best friend. Her grief anchored him to this world, to the place he served. And now, his own grief echoes through the palace. A servant's devotion so strong, it outlasted life itself. But what are the kings and queens? Do they not leave their mark? Oh, they do. Their energy is woven into the very fabric of the place. And sometimes that energy curdles. There is a room, a specific, unassuming room, a bedroom, For those who are sensitive to such things, the air in this room is thick. It is hard to breathe. A feeling of dread pools here, seeping up from the floorboards. A terrible, oppressive sadness that feels centuries old. This is said to be the room where King George III was confined during his terrible illness. The madness that stole his mind from him. The king who lost the American colonies and then lost himself. His confusion, his fear, his suffering. It soaked into the plaster and the wood. It never left. It is a room of sorrow, a monument to a mind broken by a duty too heavy to bear. To stand in that room is to feel a king's despair. It is a haunting not of sight or sound, but pure, undiluted emotion. And it is here, in this palace of echoes, that the most personal and poignant encounter would occur. An encounter that was not about history, but about family. The year was 2002, a year of profound loss. The Queen Mother, the beloved matriarch of the family, had passed away. Her absence was a void in the palace, in the family, in the nation. The mourning was deep and public, but in private, the strangeness began. It started with the clocks. In the room where the Queen Mother had spent much of her time, a small carriage clock simply stopped. At the exact moment of her passing, clock stopping at the moment of death is an old story. But this was just the beginning. Her personal staff, devoted to her for decades, began to report things. The faint, familiar scent of her perfume in an empty room, the soft rustle of her trademark taffeta dresses from around a corner, the feeling of a gentle, comforting presence. And then Prince Charles experienced it for himself, walking through a quiet corridor, lost in his own thoughts of grief. He felt it, a sudden, specific warmth, a familiar scent on the air that had no reason to be there. Not a ghost in a ruff, not a weeping servant. This was different. This was personal. This was a feeling of love, of reassurance. It was a mother's farewell, a final, gentle touch from beyond to let her grieving son know that she was at peace, that she was still watching over him. This is the true nature of a haunted palace. It is not just a museum of scares. It is a layers of lives lived, of love, duty, despair, and devotion so powerful it leaves a stain on the world. A king does not just inherit a crown and a country. He inherits its joys and its sorrows, its living and its dead. He lives his life surrounded by the echoes of his ancestors. Their triumphs are his blueprint. Their failures are his cautionary tales. And their ghosts are his constant, silent companions, reminding him that his time on the throne is but a single page in a very long story. But of all the palaces, of all the spirits, there is one story that stands above the rest. The story of a prince, a princess, and a promise that even death cannot break. A story that begins not with a ghost, but with a premonition, a warning from the future, delivered in a dream. Some stories are written in history books. Others are whispered in the quiet corners of old palaces. But the most powerful stories are written on the human heart. They are stories of love so strong, it defies even the finality of death. This is not just a ghost story. This is a love story, and it begins with a dream. Imagine the scene. It is the 1980s. A young Prince of Wales married with a growing family. Life is a blur of duty and public expectation. But in the quiet of the night, the mind can play tricks. Or perhaps it can see truths the waking world ignores. He dreamt of his great-uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, a mentor, a father figure, the man he called honorary grandpapa. But the dream was not a happy memory. It was vivid, terrifying. He saw his great-uncle not as the vibrant naval officer he knew, but as an old man, a ghost on the water, drifting, lost. The dream had a weight to it, a feeling of dread that clung to him long after he woke up. He couldn't shake it. The image of his beloved uncle, alone on the water, was burned into his mind. It felt less like a dream and more like a premonition, a warning he couldn't understand. And then the news came. Lord Mountbatten's fishing boat had been blown up by the IRA. He was killed on the water. The date of the assassination? The very same day Prince Charles had that terrible, haunting dream. A coincidence? The rational mind says yes. But the heart, the soul, they know there are no coincidences like that. It was a message, a farewell, a thread of connection, stretching across the Irish Sea, from a departing soul to the one he loved most. It was a brutal lesson for a young prince. The past doesn't just whisper. Sometimes it screams, and the people we love the most never truly leave us. This lesson would be tested again, in the most heartbreaking way imaginable. A year that changed everything. The car crash in the Paris tunnel. The news that spread across the globe, leaving a world in stunned silence. Diana, Princess of Wales, was gone. The grief was a tidal wave. It engulfed the nation. It engulfed the world. But for her former husband, the father of her children, it was a private earthquake, a world shattered. Whatever their history, whatever their difficulties, she was the mother of his sons. A vibrant, unforgettable life, extinguished in an instant. In the bleak days that followed, in the suffocating silence of grief, something happened. Something small, something inexplicable. It began with a scent, not just any scent. Her scent, the specific, unique fragrance of her perfume. It would appear in rooms she had never visited, in corridors she had never walked. It would come to him suddenly, a fleeting, beautiful, and heartbreaking presence. Their one moment, gone the next. Then, the feeling of her, not a cold spot, but a warmth, a specific feeling of her presence. He would be alone, consumed by the weight of it all, and he would feel it. A gentle, calming energy, a sense that he was not alone in his sorrow. It was never a specter, never a figure in the shadows. It was something far more subtle and far more real. It was her essence, her spirit, letting him know that she was at peace, that she was watching over their boys. It was a comfort that defied all logic, a balm on an unimaginable wound. This is the other side of the haunted life. It is not all terror and cold drafts. Sometimes it is a profound and lasting connection, a love that death cannot diminish. The ghosts we welcome are not always phantoms of fear. They are memories made manifest. They are the ongoing conversation of a relationship that did not end, but simply changed its form. He lives in a world of echoes. The rustle of a silk dress in a Sandringham library. The imperious gaze of a Tudor queen on a Windsor wall. The weeping of a devoted servant in a Buckingham Palace corridor. The scent of a lost love in an empty room. So, what is it like to be king of a haunted kingdom? It is to understand that you are never first. You are always next. You are the latest caretaker of a story that began 1,000 years before you were born. The ghosts are not intruders. They are the previous owners. They are your audience. They are your judges. And sometimes, on the rarest of occasions, they are your comfort. The crown is not just gold and jewels. It is a key that unlocks every door, in every palace, in every century. And some of those doors were never meant to be closed. The past is not dead. It is not even past. It breathes in the stones of these ancient buildings. It walks the corridors. It watches from the portraits. And it waits for the next king to come along to listen to its stories. We've walked through the long halls and heard the whispers. We felt the chills and witnessed the love that outlasts life itself. But the album is never truly closed. History has more pages to turn. What did you think of the king's true ghost stories? Was it the weeping servant, the protective mother, or the lost love that stayed with you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the mysteries hidden in history's oldest corners, make sure to subscribe. The past has so many more stories to tell.